can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It is your boy Ernie, the Blerd without fear, and I have a very special guest today, and it is none other than Brandon Montclare. Some of you might already be familiar with if you've ever read Marvel's Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. He's the co-creator of Moon Girl, and also this is actually probably one of my more personal favorites is Rocket Girl over at Image Comics. You did with also with Amy Reeder. I think you did both Moon Girl and Rocket Girl with Amy Reeder over that one over at Image Comics. You've literally just kind of worked all the way around some of the major publishers, Marvel, DC, Image. Sure. And now we got you over at Dynamite doing DuckTales, which just got announced like within the last like month or so.
Yeah, it's on the cover of previews this month.
Yeah, which I was like I don't know what it is like I remember kind of joking about a year ago about I think when Dynamite first started kind of getting into like some of the stuff like Gargoyles, Darkwing Duck, and doing like a lot of the Disney villain stuff, and I was like, wow, I was like, this is kind of wild that like these comics are like coming out in this day and age and are legitimately good. And I was like, Dynamite needs to lean more into this, and apparently they have. So, and I'm here for it. How did the whole DuckTales thing come together for you and Dynamite?
Yeah, well, just like you, I did notice that Dynamite was doing all this Disney stuff, and I saw Darkwing out there, and Nightmare Before Christmas, which I was a big fan of, and having worked with on Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, which is kind a Marvel book, but for kids. I always note, and I do a lot of other kids stuff, for the book market now, and some film and TV and video game stuff. I always am on the lookout when more like the direct market comic shop type publishers are doing kids stuff. So I was definitely aware of all the Disney stuff that Dynamite was doing. So when Nate Cosby reached out and said, "Hey, you're interested in doing some Disney, maybe a Disney book?" I was already familiar, and like you said, it was all good stuff and well received too. So it seemed to be really making a mark. It's just kind of like how it happens. I call up and I figure we're going to talk about some, maybe some different properties. And I like the classic stuff a lot. And then I have two daughters, 15 and 8 now. So stuff from the last, 10 or 15 years. I'm familiar with a lot of that also. So I was like, I hope they give me something that, I hope there's some options where I can pick something I want to do, because I did really want to be on that monthly comic Wednesday schedule again. And he said right out of the bat DuckTales, and I jumped on it, not just because I watched it when I was a kid, but also because of just the Uncle Scrooge being such an important character in comics, going back into the 50s, where it was one of the the hugest books here in America, and influenced guys like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. But then even obviously we had the 80s cartoon DuckTales, but since the beginning and all throughout, Uncle Scrooge has been such a huge character in Europe and overseas. Just a tremendously well-known, very famous, very honored to work on the same character that Carl Barks invented and Don Rosa worked on in the 90s, winning all those awards and doing those great books. So it was an easy yes, and there was no discussion of what else do you have? That just happened that way.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, because having grown up on DuckTales, myself, like I like not even just like the cartoon, but I remember I used to have like the show some age here, but when they used to have like the cassette tape stories and stuff like that. I like my mom, she bought those for me as a kid. I used to like wear them out. Like, I don't know, it was just something about the vibes. But like Uncle Scrooge is probably, I would definitely say like you can definitely qualify Scrooge as a pop culture icon. Like, when people think about like money, think about characters who are like filthy rich. Like, this is one of like the first like fictional characters that usually comes to mind.
Of course, yeah.
And you got like Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and all the other characters that that are a part of that, Launchpad, so on and so forth. It's a proven narrative that it has a lot of heart. and like I was actually, it actually kind of took me by surprise. I was like, man, I'm almost shocked they didn't go with this one first. But I'm glad that they waited. I'm glad they waited. So, but
I am too. Unless they would have called me earlier, I don't know. But
right, yeah,
I went up with it.
yeah, no, that's the only timeline I would accept. That's the only timeline I'll accept. But no, like, what is I guess for this for this DuckTales series, I was looking through the solicit on it, and it kind of sounds like I don't know if this is going to be the framing of it or not, but it sounds like it's going to be kind of like like not necessarily a recounting of stuff like from the series, but like Uncle Scrooge kind of maybe sitting down with Huey, Dewey, and Louie, just telling them like some old stories, some old tales of things that have like happened, like maybe some untold things, or like what's going to be the what's going to be the vibe going in?
Yeah, well, that's how we're going to start. So for the first 5 issues, DuckTales, the cartoon, obviously is who knows where they're going to be in any episode. They might be, someplace around the other end of the globe. They might be out in outer space. They might have time traveled to the past. They kind of went everywhere, and that's part of the great part of that series. And we're definitely going to be like, we're doing. I'm working on the first 12 issues right now for the whole year, and we're definitely going to get to all those kind of stories where it goes everywhere. But not yet. It's not so much a reintroduction or going back, but it is a new series. So I tried to kind of come up with an idea that did all of that stuff. And I said, well, you always want the setting to be a character. That's kind of an old cliche, that, the setting is important. It's like a character in this book. Certainly, you can think of Marvel's New York City or Gotham, right, or anything like that. So to me, it's like, well, Duckburg, it could be something interesting, and allows me to focus on Scrooge and Huey, Dewey, and Louie, because you don't have as much room in a comic to tell a story as you do in a 22 pages isn't as much as a 22-minute cartoon. So to bring in all those characters, is difficult, certainly. And then it goes to, well, if you're going to start bringing in Launchpad and Gizmo and Gyro Gearloose and everybody, Launchpad and Duckworth, and Duckworth and Mrs.
Webby and all that, yeah.
And Webby, and then the bad guys, and it's you would instead kind of have to pick, and then, well, which ones are you picking in the middle? So this is kind of like just my writer's and editor's brain kind of clicking. So I said, okay, well, let's do let's do it so it's focusing on Duckburg. Scrooge, with his unbelievable riches, built up that town, and so the idea being, and I think something that everyone can relate to, and certainly kids might find exciting, that you don't have to time travel into another dimension to have an adventure. There's something interesting that's happening right outside your door, and it has a history. So that allows us to kind of focus on what I call the core four, which is the three nephews and their uncle, and also on Duckburg, and kind of have all these cool settings. So it's going to be, but then again, everyday setting. So it's the library, but there's a story behind the library. There's the Duckburg jail, but there's a story behind the jail, and they got to break into it instead of most people trying to break out. The local movie theater is one of the early issues also, with stories behind it. So to kind of give it that flavor where you can have an Indiana Jones type adventure right across the street. And but then also we're going to have peppered throughout these first 5 issues flashbacks, and lovingly done in the style of the old Carl Barks stuff. So when you see a flashback, if you're familiar with the old Golden Age Barks Uncle Scrooge stuff, it's an 8-panel grid, and kind of told a story that way, and they're going to be 1 or 2 pages, and done in that style, and that gives us a way to keep in those first issues these exotic locales, because Scrooge will say, "Oh, remember the library? Well, I was once in a library," and it'll be some kind of it'll be some kind of ancient tome where he's trying to outsmart the Beagle Boys and that type of stuff. So I think we achieved getting a little bit of everything in there without making it too clunky. And and then you will also get all those characters that we mentioned before in later issues, and they're in the first issues, kind of in background, so you see that they are part of the world. But issue 6 will be, somehow I'm going to get them all into that one, and then we'll do a few issues focusing on favorite characters and that type of thing, and then we'll take it from there.
Also, something you mentioned earlier, talking about the the first 5 issues and like getting to like to 12 issues. One of the things actually I really like is Dynamite's kind of been really good about this, probably more so than most other publishers in recent memory, just like because I kind of feel like a lot of comics are kind of like they're dropping down into like the 4 or 5 issues, and then it's a wrap. But like I've been noticing that, like especially like with Gargoyle, Space Ghost, Darkwing Duck, like they've been a lot more forward moving with going like closer to a more ongoing type of deal. Like so I guess the real question becomes like writing for those first 5 issues, getting that first arc out, and and I guess also knowing that you got like a more clear runway from the writer's perspective. What is that like, knowing that like you're going to this, like it's not just going to be just the short term. You can play for the long term.
Yeah, well, you're right to say that it's a luxury because you never know how much you're going to get. Even on Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, you kind of think, it's 6 issues. We'll be lucky because Devil Dinosaur, Jack Kirby only got 9 out of it. So
Yeah.
I remember the difference with not to to only talk about Moon Girl, but so with Moon Girl. It was interesting because at that point, Marvel was doing everything like, okay, knock it down instead of the 6-issue collection. 5, and you can kind of tell it in that sense. But from the beginning, Marvel said, no, make 6-issue arcs because for the kids market, they want bigger books. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, and that to me doesn't make any sense. Some was explained to me by a very high up editor at Penguin Random House that they just like the thickness. Kids like the books because they said, oh, when we have a thicker book, it sells more because kids read it and they think they've read more than if it's a thin book. Even if it's, I said, well, why don't you just use thicker paper? But that's there. But yeah, so it's nice to have more room, obviously.
Right.
And that being said, so with the approach to the DuckTales stuff, even though I'm talking about all this first 5 issues of going through the town, and it does kind of all tie together. And writers always say this, but they also work as individual issues. But that's very much conscious of that. Moon Girl was great. Moon Girl, when I was working on that book, realistically, a huge percentage. It's not 99%, but I'll give a goofy number like 99% of the readers were reading it as a trade paperback.
Okay.
They're waiting for it was a collected book, and the reason that lasted so long. And like I said, wound up in libraries and wound up in school book fairs, and then they obviously made the cartoon out of it. Was because it had the young readership, and these days not a lot of kids are buying a monthly comic. So with the Dynamite stuff, I said, well, I would run into trouble because with Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, you only had 20 pages. Dynamite is 22, but at the time Moon Girl was 20 pages. And you still had to restart it every month. So you had to like kind of recap. So it was almost like if you had 120 pages collected in Moon Girl, it would be a little less because you have to reset it every page 1 of every issue. Whereas when you're reading it as a collected edition, it's like, you read the last page of chapter 3, which is maybe issue 3, and then you start the first page of chapter 4. And it's like, why are they telling me what just happened the previous page if you're a kid? So because it's still serialized for Dynamite, I said, well, to avoid that, which I didn't love how smoothly it read. I said, okay, well, if everything is more like a chapter and you can read them as one-offs, do a little bit of that. So in that sense, it's freeing also because it's not just you have the runway that you're talking about in the security, but it's also like, you know what, I can do one thing and then move on and then do something else. It allows for stuff like guest artists and things of that nature. So yeah, it was all very much planned out in a lot of the practical sense, but that translates into story. So, and it'll translate into whether you're a kid that's 8 or a big kid at 78, you can pick up any issue. You can pick up any issue and not have to say, "Oh, what's going on? I need to find the rest of it."
Right. Well, I just for me, I going back and thinking on it, you haven't mentioned it. Yeah, now I'm go back and thinking about the Moon Girl series. Like, yeah, it actually did do a lot of. I guess I never really paid it any attention. I guess it just kind of.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes, like, I remember working on books, even as an editor, but just kind of throughout, where it's like, oh, transitions are so important between scenes. So when it says, when you say, like, like the old classic box that says elsewhere or
Yeah.
meanwhile, or like that, a younger me was kind of like, oh, I don't want that. That's a cheesy crutch. But an editor told me, and it stuck with me forever, that stuff's invisible to a seasoned reader like you and me. So the
Yeah.
fact that it resets, it doesn't bother you and it doesn't bother me. But
Mm.
to me, it's one less page where I could have moved the story forward. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Like.
so a lot of this, yeah, and a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now is in the book market, and it's creator owned, and it's full length graphic novel. So I don't
Mhm.
have to worry about that. But the problem is that they take a long time to draw. Then you have to take a long time to solicit, and that's there's no speed to market on it. So
No.
coming back into the monthlies, it's more rock and roll, and I'm ready for it on DuckTales. Ready
I
to take
like it.
advantage. Yeah.
Hey, I like it. Well, and just I think I was looking on Dynamite's website. They were showing some of the previews, which, for those listening or watching, however you are consuming this, I'll have these up so you can kind of know what I'm talking about here. But one of the things I really dug about this whole thing is with DuckTales, the heart of the show was always, you've got Uncle Scrooge. He's this, like I say, he's got more money than he knows what to do with.
Mhm.
And and I think also at the same time, well, it was never that he was not a charitable person, but like I
Right,
always
right,
thought one of the charms of it was that he had some greed to him, but like it was always one of those deals where Huey, Dewey, and Louie, through shenanigans of their own, getting up to all sorts of mischief or whatever, or trying to fix a problem, they would always find a way to kind of get Uncle Scrooge to like lighten up a little bit,
right.
loosen the purse strings a little bit more, and I guess kind of teaching each other like what is because you mentioned having children of your own now by this point, like, so like does any of that kind of like factor into like how you like maybe how you look at the story versus maybe how you would have perceived it prior.
Yeah, certainly the dynamic.
Mhm.
As far as Scrooge being curmudgeonly, he
Mhm.
was a little more curmudgeonly in the comic than
Mhm.
he, the old stuff, or the Don Rosa stuff, which isn't that old,
Yeah.
and than he was in the cartoon. And that makes sense because something, the cartoon has to kind of appeal to the broadest of broad bases.
Mhm.
But that gave us license, and Disney liked it. Is, oh, that he's a little bit more of an old geezer. They like. But as to your question,
Mhm.
no, that's definitely the dynamic, and I take all ages to mean all ages, not a kid's book
Mhm.
only, right? Because a lot of times, I kind of this is my spiel that kids books are like sometimes written for the parents of kids. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But you have to do something that's interesting. But then again, I also want adults to be able to read it. So if you look at a book like Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, I think you can look at it and say, well, yeah, of course, a lot of little kids read this, but there's some stuff that goes over their head, but it
Mhm.
still works. Just like an episode, my 8-year-old can enjoy an episode of The Simpsons, or any kid at any given age, in any given era, can
Mhm.
really appreciate the old Bugs Bunny stuff, which is
Mhm.
hilarious. But it's like I said, some of the stuff the kids, I know an 8-year-old doesn't quite get.
Right.
Um, so the way you play that is it goes two ways. As you're saying,
Mhm.
there's these three kids who do nothing but look up to this unbelievable adventurer, unbelievable rich guy. He could, said call him a billionaire doesn't even cover it. He
Right.
can buy and do anything he wants. He goes swims in money, whatever he needs to do. What a cool guy! And not only that, he's had all these adventures where he's, he's getting his hands dirty too.
Mhm.
So that's kind of, the kid's perspective and the easy one to understand. But you definitely also have what you're talking about,
Mhm.
where to be the object of that affection really does soften and chip away at the rough exterior. But that's just the fun of the interplay, and then it's the dialogue because you know there'll be those moments, but you know Scrooge is also always going to hold a little something back, hold a little something back. But that's like I said, that's I think anybody can relate to that, and certainly having kids yeah, it makes you think about that those both perspectives even more. What do they think of me? And that's kind of easy because they're kids and I'm the adult. But you know, how do they change me? Like, you know, I wouldn't phrase it as what do I think of them, but
Right.
you know, like how have they changed me as much as it's my job to influence them. I think is very much a part of it. And I think that's the kind of the role of the writer also, you know, because I do believe that audiences play a huge part, not any kind of mystical or a hippy dippy way, you know, but people like your stuff or they like a book, they talk about it, that affects if the book lives or dies kind of on the stands, but also you take a thing like the DC universe or the Marvel universe, it's all fans kind of evolving to creators, but aside from that, just what people are reading, what people want, what people demand, like so that old Marvel slug, because you demanded it, right? It's a big part. It's a collaboration. So you know, they can all say, "Oh, look at these great stories about Spider-Man," but as a reader, you know, Spider-Man's kind of looking back at you in its 60 plus year history. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, no, you know, no, 100%. It just I like it when like especially you know, being a father myself, you know, and having sat in the room for a lot of you know, I guess like kid shows, but also like you know maybe also not exactly like maybe almost more like I don't want to say like young adult, but like, yeah, I guess, yeah, maybe more aimed at teenagers. I can definitely say that is one of the things I always do find more refreshing is when like, you know, it's like, okay, well, yeah, this is speaking to them, but it's also speaking to me too. It's not, and it's also not talking down. Like, it's not trying to assume the, you know, I guess the comprehension level of, you know, at least, not too strictly you know, of the person that's going to be consuming it. So I always think that's really cool because you know, it's a tough thing to try. I imagine it's a very tough thing to try to you know walk that line. I imagine it's more of a tightrope than it is anything else. I was curious about because we're talking about the you know the core four Scrooge, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, but like as far as other like some of the other characters that are in that you know that playground of Duckburg. I think it's safe to assume like we'll probably see some of the some of the more I guess more notable faces. Characters like was like Magica Dispel and Glumgold, you know, the Beagle Boys, stuff like that.
Right.
But like what was the challenge like taking some of those characters and like finding their voice in a writing format as opposed because with animation is easy. A voice actor comes in and you know does the thing, but like trying to find that voice in literary form, what was that like?
Yeah, it's really almost impossible to play when it literally goes to their voices and accents with a lot of it. Well, you know, with especially Scrooge. But another one, it's almost like Donald Duck. You know, like imagine if you had to write a Donald Duck book. How are you going to dialogue that? And I was tempted to say, how Scottish, how Glaswegian can I go with Scrooge? And it's so hard. And you know, it would have been a fun challenge, but I think it would have been too much of a distraction. It's like if it's a character that shows up, you know, once in a while, then you're gonna play with it. So, for instance, Glomgold is in issue. I got to count it on my fingers. Glomgold is in issue 4, and he, you know, it's interesting because he was not from Scotland in the comic, but in the cartoon, he was another Scotsman. He's from like South Africa in the original comic, but he's a Scotsman who's kind of like from the same area as. So I got to do that. So if you want to see all the thought I put behind how crazy I can make an accent on a page, you get to see that with Glomgold in issue 4. And I worked on All-Star Superman that you mentioned, you know, obviously a favorite of everybody's. I was just the assistant editor. So that book came together. Obviously, Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley know what they're doing. So to me, it's just making sure the pages are in the right place at the right time. It was a huge benefit for me as a writer because I got to see how they interacted and how that book came together. But I really didn't have any input on it. But I did have to talk to the guys. And man, you call up Glasgow, and you can't understand what they're saying. You know, it's totally nuts. But I remember that, and Frank Whiteley, he said, "Hey, have you ever?" We just talking, you know, as you know, checking on the pages, checking on whatever. He had mentioned Dudley Watkins. I think I'm gonna ruin his. I think it's Dudley D. Watkins, but he did a comic strip in the Glasgow newspapers called the Bruins, but it's really the Browns. But you know they would call it the Bruins, and it's or Willa, which is our Willie, which was Willie was one of the little kids, and he was a big fan of those, and he said, "Oh, you should check it out." So I did, and they're actually really, really good cartooning, really simple, and so I have a bunch of those, and I still flip through them because that is all dialogued in how you would try to write the crazy pronunciations. So it's a very long answer to the fact that honestly, for most of the book, I played it straight. Like I said, because if you look at the old Donald Duck comics, he's not talking through a whatever, however Mel Blanc did that voice.
Yeah.
But yeah,
There's no way anyone would be able to read. I stand by that. You would not be able to read that book.
It was considered, but it's kind of written plain, and I think what works is if you're reading it and you obviously know the old cartoon, you're gonna put those voices in. Certainly that you do. There is a sense of just kind of you know, word order and word choice, and so that you're conscious of as a writer. Huey, Dewey, and Louie. This is very, you know, this is the Disney decree, but it's how I would have chosen to do it either way. The Disney decree is it stays 1987 continuity. So there was a relaunch. I think 2017.
Yeah, 2017. Yep,
something like that, where they said, "Hey, why do Huey, Dewey, and Louie all kind of act the same? We can give them each personalities." And I understand that creative choice, but for me, it's more in line with, and it's even, like I said, the older comics, because it works on the comic book page where you have three kids who are really like one entity, you know? So for that stuff, you'll see, it'll be pretty apparent that in the sense of they all continue a sentence, you know what I mean, and finish it. And visually, you can do a lot of cool stuff with that too. Like I always liken it to, you know, those great splash pages of Spider-Man kind of bouncing through the city, and he's kind of in, not silhouette, I guess you're just knocking back, taking out the line art, and it's kind of like a shadow figure kind of moving through, color holds are on it, and then you have the actual one with all the black lines and it's ready to go. You can do that with the three characters, where if they're walking up the stairs and they're all in one panel, there's a good sequential trick that you can do where you have, you know, Huey at the top and Louie in the middle and Dewey at the back, or and they're each doing something a little different climbing up the stairs. So it's almost like you're following one character, if I'm making any sense.
Yeah.
And that's all down to Tommaso Randa, the artist, who's fantastic, but I want to make sure that I give him opportunities to do cool stuff like that. I'm not an artist, so I would definitely mess it up, but he knocks it out of the park. Literally like I say, a batting practice pitcher. You know, the idea for a writer sometimes is just throw it down the middle so the other guy can just hit it out of the park. You know, and that we try to do that. So yeah, definitely they all have a voice. They have a way that you move through the page, even though they mostly existed in a cartoon. But that's in anything. Like you know, you're gonna have a certain amount of body language in Clark Kent that isn't in Superman, and you're gonna cartoon both of them the different way.
I was gonna say it's rare we see Clark Kent with his hands on his hips and with his chest like stuck out. Like it's a
exactly
that's the Superman. That's what Superman does. Clark's usually a little more, you know, kind of, you know, not slouching exactly, but his body his body language is very different, and it's something I never really, I guess maybe as a kid I just never really thought much of it, but you mentioning, you know, Huey, Dewey, and Louie being kind of like one entity. Like, yeah, as a kid, I never really thought much of them like being any different than one another. I guess like, yeah, at the end of the day, like I pretty much did kind of, I guess like in my child brain, I just like, I guess I just quietly internalized that they were twins and never thought anything more of it than that. So like, so to me, the fact that they act the same just seemed more natural. Just, you know, because they're brothers. They grew up together, of course.
And that's of course intentional, because the design is exactly the same, except just you tell the difference between the colors. Growing up in that era, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I was, by the time the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon came out, I was already such a snob because I was a comic fan. It's like, oh, that's, even though I could never find or afford, they reprinted them even back then. But
Yeah.
it's not like I have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. But I was familiar with the black and white Eastman and Laird comics, and they didn't have different colored masks, and even if they did, you couldn't tell anyway because it was in black and white. So the idea was that you told them by their weapons. You know what I mean? That was kind of cool. But but that being said, they did have different personalities in their speech too. But like I said, it was just that kind of cool in Turtles 4 is 1. But credit where credit's due. Huey, Dewey, and Louie 3 and 1 is a lot older. So
yeah. Oh no, 100%. I guess with you're taking Huey, Dewey, and Louie and their kind of dynamic into account. Another major character that I think is I would say pretty synonymous with DuckTales. You got Launchpad McQuack though. He kind of gets around a little bit because he jumps over into Darkwing Duck territory as well.
Yeah.
But do we get? I guess I can't remember if I saw it in any of the solicits, but I know you said you were probably going to see those characters, Gyro and Launchpad and all them. Like, how much fun was it to kind of play? With some, I guess, with some of the, because Launchpad is way more of the comic relief. Some of the other characters have like a little bit. They're also their own kind of comic relief in a sense. But did you getting to play with any of that? I guess what was the vibe there with that?
Yeah, well, Launchpad, he was my favorite, so I kind of assumed he's everybody's favorite. I think that probably holds up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he's, in a book that has Uncle Scrooge, he's kind of the cool uncle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To the boys. So it's funny because you read all this stuff as a kid and you say, well, one day, like if I was a kid, all I would want to do if I ever grew up to write comics, it would be give me Wolverine versus the Punisher in a sewer, shooting and slicing at each other, and maybe I'll throw some ninjas in there. You know what I mean? That would be the type of story. But then, and I would hate. I don't want to name any artists. There's certain artists I hate. It's like, oh, that person can't draw. Those are the artists I like now. But keeping it to characters, like there were characters I hated, like that Nimrod character from X-Men, who looks just like a big Jolly Rancher, and it looks so stupid. You know what I mean? But now, if I was like the favorite writer of the X-Men, and they said, hey, you can do a one-shot with anyone you want. Like, you're supposed to pick Wolverine because it's going to get there with the audience.
Yeah.
But some part of me really wants to do Nimrod. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hated him so much. And like I said, please, I would give my drawing arm to have John Romita Jr. do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that being said, I'm very conscientious of who are the favorites, who are the people you want to see. And like I said, room is limited. So after those core 4, the one you're going to see the most of, and it'll be after the first 5 issues, it'll be more apparent. But it really is more often than not. Like I said, that's not all done yet, but it's going to be Launchpad. I really like some of the. I love Doofus. You know what I mean? I think you can do a lot with him and Webby kind of getting separated on some. Junior, I can't remember not the Boy Scouts, the Junior Woodchuck.
Oh, the Junior Woodchuck, yeah.
Right, like them getting separated from the people, from all the know what they're doing, and it's like, oh, that'd be a great story. And hopefully there'll be room for it. But you have to play to your favorites with that stuff because it's kind of the deal. If you're doing, it's like if you're gonna write 100 issues of Batman. And Joker doesn't show up in 10 of them, you're not doing your job. You know what I mean? As much as you want it to be Batmite, you got to save that for later on. You know what I mean?
Right.
Make sure you get you have to make sure you can get to issue 30 or 40 before you try to pull Batmite out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's something you said too really kind of stuck out to me because it's something I've dealt with as a reader. Because I kind of had a similar trajectory. With characters like Nimrod at Marvel. Like when I was a kid, could not stand. I thought Nimrod was the dumb. Like I was like, his name is stupid because at the time as a kid, I didn't know any better. I was like, I didn't know that the name had any like historical meaning. I was like, I was like 7 or 8. I was a stupid
Yeah,
kid.
that's
But
what you would call a nerd, a Nimrod.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Right? I was like that. I was like, who would name like? Am I supposed to take this guy seriously? And yeah, but as I got older and more like dug in on on the backs, I was like, oh no, this character's a whole problem. And I
Yeah.
was wondering like if it was anything like was there anything like that here? Was there a character, not necessarily say like character you just didn't like, but like was there a character that like maybe you weren't just absolutely positively gaga for originally, but like as you were writing this, you like maybe found an appreciation for a particular character that you probably just didn't have before?
Yeah, and not in any way that I kind of didn't say. Like I said, there's some of
Mhm.
the but I didn't I guess maybe I wasn't as a diehard a fan of DuckTales in that era.
Mhm.
So it would be like He-Man and GI Joe and Transformers. And I say this all the time. In truth, with all due respect to those properties and the fandom, and I love them from when I was a kid. DuckTales really holds up.
Yeah.
So I don't think I would have anybody like in I certainly can't think of it.
Mhm.
DuckTales that I said, oh well, this is a problem. It's just the ones that are more obscure that I wouldn't have focused on
Mhm.
are the ones appealing to focus. I was just having a conversation, and some guy was saying his favorite character was Gizmo Duck, and I was like,
Mhm.
well, Gizmo Duck, he's got a real goofy design.
Yeah.
It's hard to move around the page.
Mhm.
He's got a much different attitude, but he kind of is not 100% different than Gyro Gearloose. And Gyro Gearloose goes all the way back to the Carl Barks comics. So
Mhm.
will I ever really have a reason to use Gizmo Duck?
Mhm.
And almost as soon as I ask myself that question in my mind, and I haven't written any of these guys yet, but because I'm still, I'm not at the point yet where I'm actually scripting that stuff. But of course, you
Mhm.
think about it throughout. But anyway, as I make that kind of conclusion about Gizmo Duck, it's the writer in me goes, "Oh, you know what? I should do Gizmo Duck because how am I going to figure out a way to move him around the page? How am I
Mhm.
going to find a way that makes him have a different purpose and like all the challenges that you
Yeah.
just named? You kind of want to solve. At least I do. So
Yeah.
so yeah, you do get a sense of that type of stuff. I think if I were working on like I said, like we're just talking about the X-Men, with Nimrod or a million other guys who are goofy characters that leave the Trapster alone in Spider-Man. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, I got to do something with Trapster like that. I would have that maybe a more polarized kind of feeling of it. So
Mhm.
so I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate that because I mean, yeah, I do feel like and I guess it's probably kind of the same as this for like a lot of artists. Like, oh, I've never drawn this before.
Right.
Let me see if I can make this happen. Can I make this work? I imagine, yeah, as a writer, yeah, it's probably beat for beat almost the exact same type of energy that you would probably put behind it. And I guess because before we get out of here, a couple of things I want to hit real quick because I wouldn't be
Sure.
doing my due diligence if I didn't. But is there any chance that we're gonna see maybe anytime in the future you and Amy Reeder tag teaming up again for stuff like Rocket Girl? Because that was one of those that y'all were doing for a good bit over at Image. Is there any chance that's going to be coming back anytime soon, or you're going to be doing anything
Yeah,
more
like
with
I said,
that?
it was a great book to work on and certainly still has its fans, and I think was a fantastic, and it's weird for me to say it, but I really think it was a great book and
Mhm.
great memories, but no plans for Amy and I to be working together
Mhm.
on anything. She's doing her own thing and I'm doing my own thing now,
Mhm.
so as far as that, not so much, but always, next year is the 10th anniversary of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, believe it or
Mhm.
not. So,
Yeah, it
so
doesn't
it's
feel like it's been that long, but
I
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I know. So and that I obviously did a ton of pages with Natasha Bustos. So it's like I
Mhm.
said, maybe that's something you guys should, if
Mhm.
you're fans of, maybe keep in the back of your mind. But
Oh, okay. So, because that was actually going to be my next one. Like, we were going to see you maybe a return at some point. So, hey, I'll take all the Moon Girl I can get. So,
Yes. I like it.
and I guess you also, before we get out of here, I want to make sure everyone knows there'll be a link in the description for Dynamite's website where you can go check out the preview for DuckTales #1. Hey, if any of this sounded like anything that's of interest, make sure you go click that link. You can pick up, or I think when's I don't remember the exact date. Let me pull
November
up
6th is the in-store.
Okay. So yeah, so November 6th. So there's plenty of time. You can go, and if I'm not mistaken, you can go pre-order on Dynamite's website or go to your local comic shop, talk to your local comic shop, hook up and ask them to put this in your pull box. And like I said, it like just from the I think there was like maybe a few pages that were on there that I saw. I liked what I saw. It looked like DuckTales. It read like DuckTales. I thought it was fantastic. Just so it already had me. You got me hooked already. We did, but so yeah, go do all those things. Click all those little buttons and whatnot. Or like I said, go talk to your hookup at the shop. And also, did you have any other projects that you wanted to plug?
Yeah, nothing to plug now. Like I said, I've been working on so much stuff behind the scenes, but there's only one Brandon Montclare in the whole world. So give if you follow Facebook, I'm a little bit on Twitter, but trying to get on Instagram, and which I just signed, just started on, and I have my website. Maybe we'll start up a newsletter if enough people sign up for it.
Mhm.
So just to promote that, if you want more behind the scenes peeks at DuckTales, and then when other stuff is starting to get ready, it'll be there. It's like I haven't been as active, so I'm saying that if you're not already following, go do all that fun stuff, because that's where all the info will be.
Hey, there you go. Well, hey, y'all heard it here. Now I'll have links and all that stuff down here.
Thanks
Links
so
and all
much.
that stuff